Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and this video was recorded on the 1st of January 2021. And this is my tribute to 2020. And while there is a lot to unpack there, let's get straight into the process of painting. And my first brushstroke here is with brown. And for those who have been following my painting videos recently, you'll remember that painting a main part of the model brown early on has caused me some problems. During my 7 models in 7 days video, I painted a Rec Age RPG model, really cool model with a duster coat. And early on in that model I painted the duster coat brown, and then I got stuck. You see, brown is in the middle of the colour wheel, sort of, and so I floundered with my colour options after that. What's a good accompanying colour for brown? Well, every colour is. Realistically, brown is an accompanying colour for any other colour rather than the other way around. For this orc model, I didn't necessarily have that problem, as many of my colours were set in advance, and only a few colours were needed for this model. Brown for the main colours, green for the skin, and some black metallics for other details, and that's pretty much the lot. But to encourage me through painting brown first, I took the decision to highlight the brown as strongly as I could. Now we'll see later in the video that this didn't really come out how I intended, but it put me in the right mental place to not stress over the colours and maybe get that hang up out of my head. Now the model itself is a Plague Orc, or an Orc Plague Doctor, available to download from Cults3D by the user BTORFE, which I think may be an acronym, certainly hard to pronounce as a single word, so I'll leave a link in the description. You can have a closer look to the model, or maybe even have one printed for yourself. And if you do check them out, leave them a message, tell them I sent you. It is, as you see, a generic Hulk style orc, so this would be suitable for Games Workshop's Warhammer games, Warcraft, tabletop games, and various styles of D&D, although D&D has more styles of orcs than any other setting that I've encountered. And whilst we're talking about the model itself, I should mention I had some difficulty printing this model, not least because my printer is endlessly unreliable, as printers tend to be. This is the best result of 3 separate prints, and even if it's the best, it's still not perfect. Such as one of the feet here and part of the robe broke away. I glued it back on and I filled the gap. Sort of looks like an extra fold to the robe, so it's probably okay. Some of the support material on the back didn't come away cleanly either and broke a big chunk out of the basket. Now I do need to come back and clean that up, and I'll do that after the video. I've got an idea of maybe putting some spare arms in the basket and having one draped over the damaged section. That's quite an orc medic thing to do. Ah, look, my new patient has lost an arm. Let me just check out my spares basket. Very orc medicine. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a tribute, so to speak, to the last year, and to the pandemic that is still very much in full swing. Many people have come to blame 2020 as if the section of time we humans have arbitrarily assigned as a year has any meaning in nature beyond that it gets warm and then it gets cold again as the seasons pass. Rather, our problem is one that's been growing for decades. The untrustworthy gaining positions of trust, the mantra of I don't talk about politics, and good ideas being vilified under the pretense of the status quo somehow being the best thing ever. Just like a frog in a pot saying don't turn down the heat, this is how it's always been. Mental health is also something that's been in the minds of many of us during this time. For those who require social outlet, it's been difficult to socially isolate, relying on text or video conversations instead of in-person interactions. For me particularly, making videos like the one you're watching now has been a valuable activity to give myself a creative outlet that gives other people the opportunity to interact with me. I never wanted to be the centre of attention, simply to be involved. So, as cheesy as it sounds, consider sharing this video so more people can see it, and if you've got this far, perhaps post a comment about the painting that you're seeing to have some interaction for yourself. Yes, I've descended to the YouTuber comment begging level. If you'll excuse me from talking shop a scooch longer, I'd like to mention that there are two specific things that I'm testing with the videography side of this video. One is a different way of recording and editing the visuals, which hopefully makes the model clearer and easier to see. The other is that I've written down my thoughts as a script. And yes, it's very strange to read, I wrote a script from my script as I'm talking about reading from a script, but such is the life of a content creator. If you've watched any other of my videos, please do let me know if these have changed anything, if these have made an improvement to the experience of watching my videos. Just here I start to paint in the black of the glove and beaked mask. Black, as well as white, can be a difficult colour to paint, particularly to highlight and shadow when it comes to scale models. So in this case the black is actually green mixed with a lot of black, and the highlights are a simple addition of white to make a grey gradient. A gradient. I just wanted to highlight that pun. So painting black is essentially a slightly greeny grey with hopefully a strong highlight and mostly the darker black. Over the top of that I'll use a black wash to then blend all of the transitions together, hopefully creating a smooth look. And you can be the judge of that when you see the hero shots at the end of this video. For I then had the idea to try a new supply in the form of fancy dress fake blood. Now I don't want to use my fancy expensive brush on this unknown quantity, so I delved into my collection of ancient brushes that I have because I refuse to throw anything away, and started to dab tiny speckles of it onto the front of the orc. I found it didn't really show up in the darker colours at all, not on the brown, not on the black, and whilst it did look pretty good over the white apron when wet, once it was dried it looked a little just like normal red paint, losing the effect. Where this product did shine, pun intended, is over the metallic surfaces, where I globbed it on quite thickly in somewhat of an attempt to make it appear as dripping with fresh blood. However, once it had dried, it reduced in volume quite considerably, but it did leave a quite convincing blood stain, and that is an effect I may have to come back to in the future, particularly when it comes to metallics, but I also want to experiment with some other things to see if I can use it elsewhere. Finally, we move to the base, and you may have noticed that the base is quite uneven. This is the result of a near failure with resin casting that I've been mentioning on the Back to the Brush podcast, which I will leave a link in the description if you want to find out more about. The rolling surface here lends itself nicely to a miniature like this, although it does need a rough texture, which I created by slathering the mix of PVA glue, baking powder and grey paint. Now I only went with grey here because my entire orc army has been based in flat grey bases. The vast majority of them are a simple base that is painted grey with no texture, no details whatsoever. And while that's perfectly fine for a tabletop army, for a display model I want to put at least something in there to maybe make it not look like it's an orc standing on a base. So there we go, that's this little chap completed, ready for the battlefield and some quite weird experiments as you would expect from an orc medic. Comments are of course welcome in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and I hope you have a better year than the last.